Hello and welcome, Radio Zindagi listeners. You are tuned into 11:70 a.m. and we are here for another show, another wonderful show, Illuminating Mind Matters with Basant. Another show, another topic, but the I would say format is the same. Yes, the topics are from the society, from the community, for the community, and how people can seek help and how they can get benefited. That's all our motto. So this show is brought to you by BASANT, which stands for Bay Area South Asian Network of Therapists. It is a non-profit organization raising awareness and advocating for mental health issues that affect the South Asian community. They help the community members with educational resources and help them connect with culturally competent mental health professionals. So that is about Basant and how you can contact them. If you'd like to know more, then basantnow.org would be the website you can visit, or you can just directly give them a call. 510-770-6223 is the number. And if you think you have anything in mind which could be discussed on our show, you are more than welcome to write us. info@basantnow.org is where you should write. Once more, info@basantnow.org. And you watch us and you hear us every Wednesday, 12:30 to 1 p.m. So let me bring in my host, Shalini Dayal, who is a marriage family therapist. She'll be the host of the show. Welcome, Shalini. Let's start.
Thank you, Vedka. And I appreciate your insight and your introduction about our show. Welcome, listeners, to another episode of Illuminating Mind Matters with basantnow.org. And I am Shalini. I'm going to be your host today. And I'm very, very honored to have with me another therapist, Sangita Biswas, who's a licensed marriage and family therapist in the Bay Area. Sangita has a private practice, the Lotus Family Therapy, in the Bay Area. She helps families and individuals from diverse cultural backgrounds on issues of acculturation and assimilation, stress in relationships, and parenting styles resulting from migration. She works with the South Asian population, providing culturally sensitive therapy to families, couples, and individuals in Hindi and Bengali. In her spare time, she dabbles in art. Actually, she's very, very skilled. For people who know her, she's an amazing artist, and some of her art is actually on public display, I think in San Ramon. So welcome, Sangita, to Illuminating Mind Matters. And thank you for taking time off from your very busy schedule today to help us understand what is therapy. So let me begin with my first question. What is the difference between therapy or going to a friend?
Hey, Shalini, thank you so much for having me on the show today. This is, you started with a great question. You just started right off. What's the difference between going to therapy and going to a friend? And, you asked this question because this is a question that has been asked to us many, many times, right, being a therapist. So, well, there's so many answers we can go to that, but one of the main things that I would like to talk about right here is that when in any relationship, as they should be, right? Any relationship, it should be like a two-way street, right? When I in any friendship, I am there for my friend when they need me, and vice versa, they are there for me, right? And in this situation, in a relationship, it's very difficult to keep objectivity, right? It's very difficult to keep a sense of what's happening without being a part of it. That's one of the reasons, right? The other reason, and this will resonate very well with you, Shalini, because I know you work with a lot of teens just like me, right? Is we'll have a teenager come in and say something, and then they'll be like, "I don't want you to tell this to my parents because I don't want them to worry." Right? I don't want them to worry. This seems to be one of the things, right? A lot of people keep a lot of things in relationships because we don't want the other person to worry. And that is where therapy comes in. The space that is created is a one-way street, right? It's about the client. It's about you in that space, getting help, trying to make sense of your experiences. That's what the idea is. And of course, it's also the training that goes, right? When you go in for professional help, it's also the training, because sometimes you need specific skills, right? Then you need beyond just a listening, just a sympathetic listening ear. You need to do something about it. That's where our training comes in, right? So that, I would say, is one of the main differences, just to make it clear. I wouldn't do therapy for my friends. There's a reason why we have these ethical boundaries, because I'm too invested in that. I get impacted by it, right? And to be able to move away from that space, to take a look instead of being in it, that's one of the main reasons that you seek out therapy, not just for the professional piece of it, but just for the space that is created. Also the non-judgmental space, sometimes inadvertently in friendships, in any kind of relationship, because we love, there's an element of judgment that comes up. And even if the intention is not to judge, the consequence is that sometimes we do feel judged, right? And in a therapeutic space, that's what we create, is a completely non-judgmental space. It's an ability to come and just come with all your parts, put it all out there, and then make sense of it. So that to me is the essence of why, friends are great. I love my friends, but I wouldn't do any kind of therapy with them. I would be happy to refer them out to fabulous colleagues like you, but I will not be doing therapy for them.
Thank you, Sangita, for making that distinction and also explaining to our listeners why we go seek the help of a professional versus going to a friend in this process. Could you speak a little bit also about, because these are questions that a lot of potential clients ask and people ask, what's the difference between counseling and therapy?
Well, they are two terms that are used interchangeably, and that's why there's sometimes the distinction between the two is not very can't be discerned very easily. They both counseling and therapy in the space that we are talking about is done by clinicians. And one of the main distinctions between them is the time frame. Typically, counseling is for a much shorter period of time, right? And it addresses a stressor that is happening in your life. So during your entire life, during all our life cycles, we will be at different phases of our life. Different stresses will come up, right? We will have a set skills that we have been using, and then a stressor comes up, and we need to either expand on those skills or make sense of them. So that's when counseling comes up. The word counsel, you kind of take the advice, you work on that. Again, a little bit of a short term and more outward directed, right? Therapy, on the other hand, is a little bit, probably most cases, a little more long term, and it kind of focuses on the person. So for example, a person coming in who's facing challenges with depression, there are some underlying patterns around it. There are certain there's been a relationship with depression for a very long time, right? And how it shows up in different places, how it shows up in their life in different relationships. So kind of focusing on the person, right, with professional understanding and insight around it, a little longer period of time. So that would be the basic distinction. And as I said, they're used interchangeably because at all times it's not possible to discern easily. It's not easy to put them into different boxes. So typically what happens for us is somebody may come in for counseling because they're facing a stressor, but as we start to unpack, something more comes up. The underlying things can be more, and that's when it kind of takes on a therapeutic direction. And on the other side, some people might sometimes think that they need very long-term work there, but what turns out is they are dealing with certain stressors and dealing with certain situations that require certain set skills, certain counseling, and then they're done. So most clinicians, we are trained to counsel and provide therapy, but if we are not, then we accordingly refer out and do that. But that would be the distinction between the two. They are used interchangeably, but it's this is how we try to present to the client. Yeah.
Sorry, that's a really good distinction and explanation about counseling and therapy. Can you share a little bit about what are some of the reasons people seek, whether it is counseling or therapy, that they come into your practice?
So again, the spectrum is vast, obviously, right? A lot of times people will seek help when the existing set of skills that they have to handle something is no longer working. So the stress might be the same, but they've been trying the same thing, the patterns, right? That's where we notice the patterns. They've been using the same thing, but the outcome has not been the same. That would be one of the things. And it's typically we see it when people are going through some life changes. So people go through things like, empty nest syndrome. They will go through divorce. They will go through even getting into a relationship, out of a relationship, right? Job changes. There are many things, many times in life when there's that gap, that's what they feel, and they come in at that point of time. Sometimes they're there when the distress level. So that's stress. Stressors are what comes. They're probably more short term. They are turning into something more long term, and the client feels a sense of helplessness that I've been trying all of these things and I'm not getting to do anything. One-on-one, a stress to a stressor in life, right? Sometimes stress on a very long-term basis turns into distress, right? So that's when they are dealing with something more than just stress, and that's when they are feeling pain. They can't make a sense of that pain. It's real, but because the kind of pain that you and I see in our work cannot be discerned with a blood test or typically with a scan or anything like that, the pain doesn't even seem real. So they'll come over and they'll say, I don't even know how to make sense of this pain, right? And then sitting there labeling it, helping them understand whether there's a distinction between a clinical piece or not. That's sometimes when people just come in, and sometimes just knowing that they have something that's real, and then getting the help around there, even directing them for medical intervention later, so many other things, right? So pain, distress, stress, distress. And again, when it is, sometimes they come in because somebody in their family told them they better get their act together in order to be better present in their relationship. Sometimes it's that relationship piece that also comes in, right? So these are various reasons why we see clients in our practice. And parenting, again, a big thing. Conflict, just conflict across lifespan is something that is also why people seek out help, right? To just understand conflict, to understand themselves better. So that's the whole spectrum, right? The stresses that come from outside and things that you are dealing with inside, when they both clash together, that's also not a very great space to be in. And these would be the various things.
And that's a great explanation of all the different reasons for all that people can seek to see a counselor or a therapist. Those are really good. I actually have a question about the finding an appropriate therapist and what to look for. But before I go to that question, I can see Vedika listening, and she has seems like there's some thoughts and questions, and I would like to invite you, Vedika, in this process and share with us, what do you hear? What are you curious about, and what questions you would like to ask Sangita?
First of all, Shalini, it's as always, it's a learning thing. I'm learning, being a layman, whatever I'm hearing. So when Sangeeta just described the difference or how it is similar, like counseling and therapy. So all of this is a learning thing. I think being a layman, you hardly understand these terms, and sometimes you get scared of no reason. So thank you so much, Sangeeta, for laying it out so easy on us. So yeah, definitely I'm learning with this. And listeners, if you are listening to us, if you are learning with me as well, let me remind you that you are listening to Illuminating Mind Matters with Basant. We bring this show every Wednesday, 12:30 to 1. And if you would like to discuss something on the show or get something discussed on the show with the experts, do write us. info@basantnow.org is where you can write. If you want to know more about Basant, basantnow.org is where you can visit, or just give them a call, 510-770-6223. So let me not hold you guys. Let's get back to our informational session.
Thank you, Vedika. I appreciate it. So Sangita, my question is about what should people, somebody who's seeking counseling, what should people look for? An individual, couple, a family, what should they look for in a potential therapist?
So first of all, making the decision, once you've taken the decision that you need help, understanding in what capacity you need help, right? You mentioned individual, family, couples. In all these instances, you have different clinicians usually specializing in them, right? So first of all, finding someone, just a starting point is referrals from a trusted source. So sometimes, just talking to your doctor, talking to someone who's already had, if you have a support system in which people have talked about mental health issues and they are willing to share, that's where the referrals source starts, right? The internet, great place, right? We are most of us have some kind of presence on the internet, psychologytoday.com, BASANT, we have a great directory right here. The first step is to go and kind of try to speak to as many people as possible. Now, this is what I tell people. Therapy works, right? Bottom line, it works. Doesn't matter which culture you're from, what the problem is. It's a known thing. It just works, right? Making the fit with the right therapist, having that alliance with the right therapist, that's where the actual work is, right? I can be, a great therapist, but I may not be a great fit for you, right? So at that point, till the point of finding that advocacy, self-advocacy, either for yourself or if you're looking for someone for your relationship or for your child, just knowing that it is a process. It'll take a little time. A lot of times when I will hear, oh, I tried therapist, I went to someone, it didn't work, right? You don't give up with physical pain, right? Unfortunately, there are times when you have some sort of physical pain that's been discerned, but you go to a doctor, you don't find it, you just don't give up on it, right? Emotional pain, just because again we can't assess it, doesn't mean it's not real, right? Mental health is real, right? So get into the process thinking, knowing or accepting that there are steps to it, right? So the first is try and get as many reliable resources as you can, right? Make the call, listen to yourself. You have a gut, right? You have to. It's not right from the first call. You're not going to understand that you will. This is the therapist, right? Sometimes it takes a little time, right? But the most I tell this to clients: listen to yourself. You are your best judge, right? So after the first call, go in for a session thinking you're going for one session, right? You want to see, of course, you want to see if the therapist is if all our background information and everything is up there. Most places, you know what they are. That's the one that's not difficult to find. It's that connection piece, right? Then when you're speaking to someone, you feel you're heard. That's the main thing. Not just trust. Trust is earned, right? Trust, credibility, that's on the therapist, right? We need to create that space that fosters trust. Trust is not something that is just on a Yelp review. You need to just find that. You need to listen to yourself. So go in. If you feel heard, if you feel that this makes, this person doesn't have to go through my exact experiences, but can help me make sense of my experiences, then do that. And if for any chance you are not being able to make that connection, listeners, don't give up, right? As I said, therapy works. It's just a matter of finding it. If the way you advocate for any other professional in your life, the way you go about finding the right fit, please do the same thing for therapy.
Thank you for explaining that. And you're right. We want listeners and people who are seeking therapy to not give up. If you don't have a right fit with the current therapist, interview others. There will be others who are available, and you may be able to find someone who is a better fit for you. Speaking of therapists, what are the different kinds of licenses that people have, clinicians have, that provide therapy?
Okay, so just for talk therapy, you mean, so you do have your you have your psychiatrist first, right? I mean, not first. I mean, that just in a sort of distinction. The medical professionals, they are the ones who will assess you for mental health issues and are the ones who will be able to give you medication if need be, right? They'll follow up with you on medication. And then there are psychologists, right? They do talk therapy too. They do the counseling piece, and they have a clinical piece which includes testing. right? So all these are these certain challenges that can be tested, right? For example, testing for autism, testing for ADHD. This is where a psychologist comes in. Then there are licensed marriage and family therapists, licensed social workers. We are, you and I are both LMFTs. We can do talk therapy. So we don't do the testing piece of it, but we do the talk therapy piece of it, right? So all under our gamut, anything to do with relationships, including the most important relationship, the one with yourself. All of those, making sense of that, going past mental health challenges around that, getting skills, all of that comes under talk therapy. So it's psychologists are that they kind of have that extra testing piece that they have, and they do counseling too. And then there are therapists, LMFTs who you can LMFTs, LCSWs who can all,
yes,
Shalini, if I'm missing anybody.
LPCCs,
sorry.
Also.
LPCCs, yes.
And also, so the question often asked is counseling confidential? When somebody goes to whether they see a psychiatrist or a psychologist or an LMFT or LPCC or LCSW, is this confidential? What does that mean?
Yes. So speaking from my perspective, right, as an LMFT, confidentiality is the cornerstone of our work, right? Because that's the whole idea. You want to come in, and that space that you're creating is extremely confidential. But clients have to know, and we go over this. And the first time that we speak, before the first time we speak to them, there are some caveats to confidentiality, and they've been put in place for the safety of the client. So we are, for example, the top ones that come to mind. We are mandated reporters for child abuse, neglect, just like your doctors, your nurses, what have you. We for elder abuse, right? For any kind of if you're there to, if you are thinking of harming someone else, if you have a plan to harm someone else, then we are mandated by law to talk about that. And I just want to finish by the most important place where we do break confidentiality is a lot of people seek help when they are in pain, and self-harm, unfortunately, is one of the ways that they try to find relief, right? In different, again, in a whole different gamut of spaces there. We do break confidentiality to get you help. That's not reporting, right? And you can see even with reporting and with getting help for any kind of self-harm, it is put in place for the benefit of the client. It is not punitive. So those, apart from that, confidentiality is held at its highest, that is, as I said, the cornerstone of our work, the whole reason why people can create, therapists can create the space is because we can keep it confidential. So I hope that answers your question. As I said, all clinicians go through it, over it with every client, but they need to understand advocacy. You need to understand and what your own rights are. Yeah.
Thank you for the great explanation on confidentiality. What are some takeaways that you would like our listeners to get from our conversation today that they could remember about the whole therapeutic process?
So, even as I'm just thinking of what we just spoke, I think the idea of advocating for yourself and your own emotional, recognizing, not invalidating your own pain and seeking that help. Because when you are picking up the phone to call a therapist, there is one more person listening, right? Yourself. Yourself, you are not invalidating yourself. A lot of times we do that. So I think one of the main takeaways is that if we can remember it's a process and not a switch that we can switch on and off, right? We give this process that chance, and advocate for ourselves, because you are important. Your mental health is just as important as your physical health.
Okay, thank you for that. And I would also like to add, like, the other two things that you actually brought up, a couple other things, is all the different reasons people can go in, and remembering that what you're going through, if there is the things that were working before are no longer working, if there's pain and stress, absolutely. And then also finding a therapist, somebody who that not giving up. And if it means you have to interview 2 or 3, or meet 2 or 3 before you have the right fit, absolutely go for it.
Yeah.
With that, Thank you, Sangita, for your very valuable insight into the whole concept of therapy. And I hope this helps our listeners. And to just remind them that we have another show planned next week. We'll be picking up two very different topics. One of the topics will be on autism and services for autism, and the other topic will be about co-parenting through divorce and separation. In the coming weeks, we'll be talking about that. So with that, I turn it over to Vedika.
Thank you, Sangita, and thank you, Shalini, for bringing Sangita to us. And I think it was entirely informational, and our listeners must have learned a lot with this session. So, listeners, if you think something is happening around you which you would like to be picked on our show, you're more than welcome to write us on info@basantnow.org, which is info@basantnow.org. Or you can visit the website, which is basantnow.org, to get more information about Basant. Or if you need some help, if you'd like to know more, 510-770-6223 would be the number. Thank you once again, Sangita and Shalini.
Thank you.
For this
Thank you.
important thing.
Thanks.
We'll see you next week.
Bye.